Hi everyone. Quite a good group, very vocal group. Welcome everyone to the Wolters Kluwer CCH network event. For those of you who I haven't had a chance to meet as yet, my name is Russell Evans. I'm Chief Executive for Wolters Kluwer across the Asia Pacific region. Before I start on the taking you through the run sheet, I do want to tell you a quick story about branding because it's somewhat relevant for today. About 2 months ago, I was on a flight down to Melbourne, sitting next to a nice old guy. We started having a chat, and it ended up he was a former lecturer at University of New England, my old alumni, in accounting and tax. So we're having a bit of a chat, and he said, "What do you do?" And I proudly, because I'm part of the alumni of University of New England, so very proudly I said, "I'm the Chief Executive of Wolters Kluwer." And he said, "What do they do?" And I said, "Oh, good question. We do tax, accounting, software, workflow, tools, books." And he scoffed. You know how nice old guys sort of scoffed across the plane seat. And he said, "How on earth are you guys ever going to compete with those people at CCH?" And that's one of the challenges we've got. And I think I may have mentioned to some of you in the past that as I stand up here, we are in the throes of doing a global realignment. So you start seeing the Wolters Kluwer brand more. Don't worry about where us nice people from CCH are. We're still here. We're just now having different business cards and trying to explain that connection between CCH and Wolters Kluwer. Anyway, enough of the story. So on to today's event. Now, for those of you who haven't been to one of our network events, the goal from the day we started back in February 2011 was to bring together like-minded tax managers from large corporations across Australia and provide and facilitate an opportunity to have open conversations for us to educate, inform, and often give practical examples of how to solve challenging tax-related issues. This particular event, around country by country, came out of an event that we ran with the ATO in September last year when they came to this same venue and was talking to a group very similar to yourselves. I'm sure a lot of you were here that day. They were talking about the e-filing, about country by country reporting broadly, and e-filing quite specifically. There were a lot of frowned faces in the audience, and as part of our follow-up to that event, we got a lot of feedback from the participants saying that they'd like to know more, like a hands-on practical discussion about what this whole e-filing of country by country reports is all about, and specifically what the hell is this XML schema thing. Because it's a different technology pathway to lodging a country by country report, particularly a local file. And so the purpose of today is to give you that practical, provide a practical workshop. Now we'll be using the CCH Integrator technology platform to help demonstrate how the XML schema works and the e-filing schema works. But this is designed to be, it's not just Daniel and Jim standing at the top here speaking with you. We've got about 150 people joining us via a webinar. This is designed to be a two-way conversation. Now I know Sydney-siders are pretty competitive, so you'll be, I want to inspire you that yesterday in Melbourne when we ran the event was very, very proactive, hell of a lot of questions from the floor. So we need to beat those Melbourne guys. So, but it's designed to be hands-on. You'll see on your seats, you've got a little number pad. The purpose of that is throughout today's discussion, we'll be doing a poll. There'll be a poll in the audience, the live audience, and also those joining us by webinar will be sent out questions, and they'll be given the opportunity to poll those. Now we'll be aggregating and replaying or aggregating the answers and showing you the answers or the summary of the answers during the session. We'll also be aggregating all of the polling we've done across Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and Brisbane, putting that into a report and sending it out to you in the next few weeks. Okay, so a couple of housekeeping items. The first is please turn off your phones or put them on the silent. The second is if you're in the audience in the Wesley Centre today, if you have a question, put your hand up and we'll run a microphone over to you. We want you to speak clearly in the microphone so the people joining us via the webinar have an opportunity to hear the question, and then we'll answer it both to the audience here and to those on the webinar. I think I've covered everything, guys, haven't I? All right, so with that, I'll pass over to Daniel and Jim. Thank you.
All right. Yep, it's working. Sounds good. That's a good start. Might start with a video actually before we introduce ourselves. Thanks.
Did you know country-by-country reporting is part of a broader suite of international measures aimed at combating tax avoidance through more comprehensive exchanges of information between countries? In Australia, CbC Reporting applies to significant global entities. These are global parent entities with annual global income of $1 billion Australian dollars or more, or a member of a consolidated group of entities where the global parent entity has annual global income of $1 billion Australian dollars or more. From these companies, the Australian Tax Office has mandated the electronic lodgement of a local file that contains detailed information about the local taxpayer's operations and intercompany transactions. There are a couple of important considerations to be aware of, namely when and how to lodge. For Australia, the rules apply for income years which started on or after the 1st of January 2016. Companies with June year ends will need to comply with the new rules for the year ending 30th of June 2017, while December balances will be impacted first for the year ending 31st of December 2016. This means December balancers who want to lodge Part A of their local file as a substitute to Section A of their International Dealing Schedule will need to lodge it electronically with their income tax return in July 2017. So, how do you lodge electronically? The ATO has a mandated lodgement via an XML schema, which means you will either need to take time to internally develop technology to do this, or simply adopt a ready-made software solution. CCH Integrator is a collaborative cloud-based technology solution which Australian multinationals can quickly and easily deploy to help manage, streamline and automate the preparation and lodgement of the Australian local file. CCH Integrator will also allow you to mitigate risk by being able to upload and map data disclosures, providing you with a detailed, defensible audit trail. To learn more on how CCH Integrator can help, speak to Wolters Kluwer today.
All right, after Russell's first plug of our software, that's our second shameless plug for today. But just before we start, I just wanted to introduce my colleague Jim. We're going to do this the same way we've done Brisbane, Perth and Melbourne, where we've been introducing each other. So Jim.
Hello everyone, my name is Heather Ruddock. I'm Strategic Engagement Manager at Wolters Kluwer Corporate Reporting Solutions. And it's my very great pleasure to welcome you to CCH Networks today.
Wow. So Daniel's actually a ventriloquist.
Yeah,
I didn't realise that.
Yeah,
I didn't see those lips move, but that was impressive.
I told you I'm good, right? I've been practicing really hard. Okay, all right, I might try that again.
Take two.
Yep. So Jim is a director in our corporate reporting solutions team or business unit at Wolters Kluwer, based in Melbourne. He's also the original architect of our CCH Integrator platform and Tax Integrator platform from back at EY, and now is head of our global product strategy. So that's you, Jim.
Thanks, Daniel. Daniel Levin. He's been in our business for 3-4 years now. Daniel's got a deep background in tax technical. He's a transfer pricing specialist. Spent 6 odd years in public practice, working for a couple of the big four, doing a lot of outsourced TP work, advisory and also compliance. But got sick of doing compliance work because of its repetitive nature, and has now come across to our technology business to actually help us create technology to help streamline the process. So his role at the moment is to basically help invent and create, and then also then help educate others in how to use.
So really in a nutshell, we have an IT nerd and we've got a tax nerd, and together we've got a recipe for hopefully some success for all of you. All right, first up, that's the XML schema. All right, it's code. The only person that probably can interpret this is, we've got an architect in the room other than Jim, but for most of you, this is going to look like, well, for me, gobbledygook, right? It's really hard to really understand what this is, but that's really what the form looks like going forward. So you're used to your IDS form, that's what your output will be to the ATO. The question is how you're going to get there. We're going to try and walk through that today. So what we want to do today is do a bit of a recap of where we're at with CbC reporting, and then we want to dive into the local file specifically. Okay, so as Russell alluded to, we had our session with the ATO last year in September. So Anthony Skoulis and Caroline Barth from the ATO CbC reporting team came in, gave a bit of an overview of what you need to do to prepare your CbC reporting requirements, and dived into some of the detail around that. But today is really focused on the local file. For those of you who maybe not attended it or maybe a little bit behind in what you need to do, so the BEPS initiative started about 4 or 5 years ago now, so about 2012. There were 15 key action items, one of which is action 13, which is CbC reporting. There are 3 core statements you need to prepare, so a CbC report, a master file, and a local file. Your CbC report, effectively if you're an outbound Australian company, so you're headquartered over here, you will need to do all 3 of those statements. If you are an inbound company, so you've got your subsidiary here of a foreign headquartered multinational, it's very likely you'll just need to be doing a local file, unless, of course, you've been given parent surrogacy rights, I guess, to then lodge the CbC report and master file on behalf of the parent. Where that usually comes about is if the country where your parent is domiciled, they may have not mandated CbC reporting yet, or they've done it, they've mandated it after Australia, because Australia was one of the first to mandate it. Interestingly, I don't think we've had any parent surrogates yet. None. Anyone in the room that's been nominated to be a parent surrogate? No. Okay. So you've got those 3 components. Now, the Australian local file is totally unique. It is a very unique requirement compared to what the OECD has prescribed. So if we just talk about each particular requirement, the master file is effectively transfer pricing documentation at a very high level. It's giving you an overview of your global operations, your business strategy, your key functions, assets and risks at a very global level for the group. Your local file, as prescribed by the OECD, is talking about your local operating entities, where you're actually based as a multinational and what transactions you're entering into with other counterparties within the group. And again, that's really an output in Word, a transfer pricing report largely. Now, one of the reasons that Anthony talked about there being a difference by the ATO in asking for a different local file in terms of their requirements is because of a lot of duplication between what's currently prescribed by you as taxpayers here in Australia to prepare Australian transfer pricing documentation. So that 284E documentation. A lot of the information in that report that you're preparing, or potentially preparing for you to support a reasonably arguable position on your IDS, a lot of that same information is similar to the OECD's local file prescribed requirements. So the ATO took it upon him to say, well, let's not duplicate the efforts, let's ask for other information that we may not necessarily be getting from you as taxpayers, or maybe even more information. So we'll go into that a little bit more when we get into the local file requirements. In Australia, those who are subject to CbC reporting are called significant global entities, as the video alluded to earlier. So part of a group that's got at least $1 billion of annual consolidated revenue per annum. In Europe, it's 750 million euros. In the US, it's 850 million US dollars as a threshold. And then lastly, that point, which is a little bit newer, so late last year in December, just before the break, there was some exposure draft legislation that was released around proposed penalty increases for SGEs who lodge certain tax documents late. So that's not just a CbC report, it would be your tax return, your BAS return, your FBT return. That will be effective from 1 July 2017. So that means if you lodge your CbC report 1 day late, there will be a $105,000 penalty, up to a maximum of $525,000. So it's expensive not to comply. Now, dates. So it's an interesting journey, Jim, because I think we started our first build of our software for the CbC report in about September 2014, actually.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's just after the OECD came out with their guidelines for CbC disclosures.
That's right. And I think what we found from a lot of clients or multinationals that were looking at this then was that they were waiting for more information to come through, because a lot of countries were adopting it in a sort of piecemeal approach. Some were taking unilateral decisions around their specific requirements. Some were really proactive and wanting to do dry runs around their data. And as it's gone closer, more and more have started to adopt doing a dry run of their data as timing gets closer to when you need to file. So what we've got on board over here is really just a bit of an overview of the timing from here on in. So I think the key theme here is the next 18 months, and I appreciate there's some corporations in the room that may not have these year ends. There's some unusual ones like May year ends, but the bulk of you would fall into those 4. You'll need to be filing your requirements within the next 18 months. For early balances, that starts as early in a few months' time as July and December of this year. And then at the end of September 18, the exchange of CbC report information between tax authorities who've signed up to this multilateral exchange of CbC report information. They'll be exchanging CbC reports with one another. So interestingly, the US hasn't signed up to it yet, but 59 countries have. And back in September last year, when the ATO presented to all of you, it was 44. So it's growing. Okay, so the Australian local file. So what does it look like? You've got two Australian types of local files. Okay, so there's two different versions depending on which criteria you might fit. There's a short form, which is for a very simplified multinational. So you might be an inbound here that has got very low turnover. There's other criteria if you have a look at the ATO website as to whether or not you might satisfy short form local file criteria. You'll need to prepare just that information, which is really 5 key questions you need to answer. It's qualitative based information about the business strategy of the group in Australia, the org structure, really an overview of the local operations. The full local file, which is what we're going to really get into a lot more today, is all of the short form local file requirements plus a lot more. So part A of the local file is effectively a substitute to section A of your IDS. So a lot of you will be familiar with preparing your IDS. In your IDS you've got your transactions from 5 to 12, questions 5 to 12 that you're disclosing, so different types of transactions, product, royalties, services. You're now providing that information in part A at a more disaggregated level. So before, you'll be noticing on that form you've got expenditure, revenue, percentage of documentation dealings, and also your method. You're now having to disclose that expenditure and revenue by country, so total by country. So a lot of you will be preparing that information anyway to get your numbers for question, your details for questions 3 and 4 for your top 3 countries, but now you need to provide it at that more disaggregated level to the ATO, plus a bit of more information, which we'll get into in a minute. Part B, new. Intercompany attachments or legal agreements for your transactions or material transactions that you're disclosing at Part A. Your master file as a Word or PDF attachment, and your financial accounts. Now there's going to be instructions from the ATO on the specific requirements released for the for the local file in April of this year. So we have been engaging with the ATO almost on a daily basis at the moment because there's just questions coming in from these sessions. And we're going to actually cover this now. Actually, it's probably a good segue to talk about some of the differences between your IDS and your local file. So a lot of similarity in terms of information, but as I said, you're now providing it at a more disaggregated level. So that first one there, which is your name of the Australian party, the counterparty, and the country of the party, you will be preparing that to get to your IDS disclosures, but now you've got to disclose that. The other thing that's new, foreign currency gains and losses. So we had a question in Perth, Jim, didn't we?
Yeah, the question was just in relation to how do you measure an FX gain on an individual transactional basis? Because of course, I think every single corporation is doing conversion at a P&L level or a trial balance level. So there will be a need, according to the current ATO instructions, to disaggregate the FX gain or loss and put it down to a transactional level. The ATO agreed that there's confusion around that, and have said to us they're going to respond with more guidance in the next week and a half on that. But I don't know how they're going to deal with it.
Yep, that's right. And then as you can see, is where all the ends are over there, that sort of covers a lot of the information in the short form local file and your legal agreements and the like. All right, so the admin solution. So for those of you who might not be aware, the ATO has released some relief for all of you in the first year of filing. So you have an option to avoid duplication. Okay, so for December year end, so the first taxpayers need to file the local file and the other CbC reporting requirements. You have the ability to lodge Part A of your local file with your tax return. It's a separate disclosure to your Form C, so it's not part of the Form C, in July when you lodge your tax return, and not complete Section A of your IDS. You need to do the rest of the sections because it's not transfer pricing related, but you need to then, you can leave Section A out and do Part A of the local file instead. Come December, when you need to file your CbC report and your master file, you then can also lodge then Part B in December. If you choose, however, to lodge your IDS as you normally would, you will need to do Part A and Part B in December. Now, obviously there's duplication there. I mean, why would you be doing compliance twice? You could argue that the information is largely similar in what you're preparing, but again, effort to comply twice within 6 months, and also you are giving the ATO 2 different levels of information in terms of one's more aggregated than the other to have a look at. So just something to consider. I think we found about 50-50, so the top end of town are really keen to only do Part A, but even the smaller ones now are sort of turning their heads, and interesting in Melbourne yesterday,
Yeah, and I think a lot of it comes down to the complexity and energy that's required to actually do the IDS disclosure. And I think for those more simplified companies, they're happy just to go with the IDS for now and hold back until there's more certainty around local file disclosures. But I think for a lot of the bigger corporations, more complex transaction structures, they're saying let's just go straight into it. And, actually, a lot of them have already started a lot of preparation activity now too, just getting those transactions ready as best they possibly can.
Yeah, I think we've now got a polling question. So that little device that Russell was talking about, what we want to do is get your response on this. So just on what we just discussed. So do you plan to lodge Part A of the local file as a substitute to Section A of your IDS, taking it up the ATO's admin solution, or would you prepare an IDS and then the full details later in the year, or you're not sure? Interesting to see what your response is compared to our other cities.
So I think you've got 10 seconds to think about it and respond. No, 10 seconds now, with some really good background music to think. Oh, no worries. Oh, no worries. No problems. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, there's the results. Okay.
I reckon, but with all due respect, I reckon Sydney's a bit more slack than Melbourne.
I think so.
Because Melbourne was more...
really proactive in Melbourne.
Yeah, way more proactive. Melbourne was up in the high 60s, I think.
Yeah, I think so. So can I just get someone to mention who is going to lodge early? Anyone? Here we go. That's proactive. And why? Yeah. Don't want to do the same thing twice. Okay. Yeah. December year end. Inbound subsidiary of multinational. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else who's going early? Thank you. There's a mic coming there actually.
Yeah, no, same reason. Don't want to replicate the same one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Joe, did you want to speak as well?
Pretty much same reason as everyone else, and
yeah,
we have to prepare the transactions anywhere in the data.
Yeah, and actually, just while you've got the microphone there, Joe, because we were having a chat yesterday with Di Govern, and just getting some more insights into your fact patterns. And do you have a sense of how many transactions? You kind of got to that point where you have an indicator of how many lines you're likely to do disclosing?
Do you mean in terms of sort of transaction type? Or?
Yeah, as they're rolled up. So I guess it's transaction types between related parties.
Yeah, I'd say we have somewhere in the region of sort of maybe 12, 15 different types.
Yep. And related parties? Yeah, I think what's been
30 plus.
Yeah, okay. So what's been really interesting is no one's ever had to think about the data in this way before, and by asking these questions, everyone's saying, well, I don't really know, because I've never had to group it. So that's why I think we found a few December year-end inbound subsidiaries who've actually already started to prepare, and it's really hard to estimate until you actually go through and collect the data. Yeah, thanks. That's great.
All right, so what does the XML schema mean to me? Maybe before we jump into the detail, probably would be worth sharing with you something that we actually had sort of hot off the press a little bit when we were doing our Brisbane session. So about half an hour before we did our Brisbane session 2 weeks ago, the ATO CbC Reporting team released to the consultation group what they called a simplified message structure table. So those of you who've been part of the consultation group might have seen these message structure tables being released iteratively over a period of time, which was effectively an Excel sort of template or table of information of how this needs to be disclosed to the ATO in an Excel format, but very hard to consume if you're not really an IT person. They then released a simplified version of this. So we're just going to put it onto the screen and talk through a little bit with you.
Yeah, so Daniel was saying this is effectively an English version of what you're seeing in that XML schema. It's still not the format in which this information is actually disclosed to the ATO. This is merely just an explanation, so treat this as an instructional form effectively. But I guess the point I wanted to bring your attention to was when we go down to, once we get past all of the header information, so all of these attributes have to be disclosed. But once we get down to the detail and we get past the CbC report, here we go, local file part A. So this is I guess the pertinent information that we're really focusing on today. Now in the context of every single transaction, so that every transaction type between every counterparty, whether it be material or not, and material, the definition of that is still a bit ambiguous. But for every one of those transactions, you have to disclose these attributes. Now, I think there's about 28 elements here, and then there's additional 24 data elements that have to be disclosed in Part B, which is all about the intercompany agreements. But for those 28 or so financial attributes about the transaction, there's still a lot of uncertainty about the specific transaction type. So you can see, I think, it's a bit of an eye test there, but that second field there's a transaction type. That's when it gets into the detail of unpacking all the various different natures of transactions between both parties.
Yeah, so we had actually one of our clients in Perth, a very large mining client. They were sort of looking and going, but where's loan balances? Where do you put them? Because I've seen this message structure table and I can't find interest and I can't find loan balances.
Yep.
But it's sort of a little bit hidden because you can see that transaction type in row 100 there. That actually covers all the transactions. So when you go and break down the ATO table of different types of transactions, you can then unpack it. So what we've done then is taken this and turn it into a consumable version of it to be able to see.
No, it's not code. It's actually an English description for a code. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Russell. Yeah. So the question. That's all right. Jade. That's all right. Maybe always. The question was, are there codes? So the old IDS had activity codes, and what was the other one? Another code as well.
They've got codes for documentation.
Okay. Yeah, of course.
And all that,
of course.
Yeah.
So a lot of codes that were 1s and 2s and whatnot. They don't have 1s and 2s anymore, which is great. So they just have English descriptors for the transactions. But the list of transaction types, which we don't have that here on the screen today, but there's about 25 different transaction types, the ones you'd expect that kind of fall off the IDS fields. Yep.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So now we get into a bit more of the detail about what the actual XML schema is.
Yeah. So can I just get a show of hands? Who files their corporate income tax return electronically to the ATO today? Is anyone?
That doesn't necessarily mean yourself. You can even through an advisor as well.
Yep. Yeah, whether your organisation does it directly or through a tax advisor.
Okay.
So it's definitely the minority. There's a few. Okay. All right. So maybe it's about 20% of the room. Yes. Very good. The point there for those of you who didn't hear is when the ATO will accept us to file electronically, we can and will. But there are some issues with large corporates with that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess there's an overriding trend within revenue authorities around the world in that they obviously want to get information in an electronic form, which makes it easier for their systems and their, as they call them now, robots, to go through and basically mine. And that means applying algorithms to compare you against your peers, to identify differences between this year, last year, the year before, spot trends, identify outliers to then trigger audit activity. Okay, so remove the human element, the human judgment that's required to identify an audit profile. So that's the reason behind all of this stuff, right? Now they've had the capability to electronically file corporate tax returns since the early 1990s. Large corporates, as you pointed out, they've had difficulties electronically filing for a bunch of reasons, technically. But CbC is the first time they've actually mandated electronic filing of corporate information beyond a BAS return or another sort of informational form. So this is the start of quite a lot of further requests, I think, from the ATO for further information to be provided electronically. Now, the way that the ATO support the transmission of that data from the corporate to the ATO is via this technology which is called XML. It's also called XBRL. Sometimes I use the term XML schema. You don't really need to know the detail. All it is it's basically it's machine-to-machine communication in a form that is somewhat human readable. I'll use the term somewhat. What we had on the screen there before was the XML schema. So you can kind of read it, but good luck trying to actually produce it or understand it. So it's designed to allow machines to talk to each other. So what that then means is that for a corporation who needs to provide that information to a regulator, needs to have a machine that can produce that information. Okay, so it's no longer filling in a form manually. You need to have a software program that can actually produce that. And it needs to be in the right format and it needs to be validated because the ATO want to receive it and they want to basically run it straight into their engines. So something that the ATO have not made clear and we've been working with them on is that it's now abundantly clear that every corporation in Australia will need to use a machine to actually produce this XML schema. And I think a lot of corporations have been confused by that because a lot of December balances, early balances, have been engaging their IT group saying, help us with this thing, help us produce this XML schema. And it's not as easy as getting your IT people to go and write a macro in Excel or write an easy program. It's actually quite complicated. So that's...
yeah, and I think that's highlighted by that second statement there. So the ATO said you can submit this information through the SBR portal. So SBR, for those of you who might not be familiar, is how they receive badge returns, income tax returns. It's built into our software as well. So our clients who use our software file their tax returns electronically through the SBR portal. So this is the same way for CbC. But they've also said tax agent and business portal, and that's a little bit of fallacy in some sense because part B is where it gets really tricky. Okay?
It can't be uploaded through the portal, right?
It just can't.
Yep.
And we've confirmed that with the ATO. You can't convert those PDFs and Word attachments.
And again, the technology issue here, it's fairly simple. It's actually complex, but it's fairly simple to comprehend in that the business portal, which you're probably already submitting some disclosures to the ATO, you'd probably just get a file off your desktop and upload it to the business portal. Now, can you imagine doing that for this local file? And then you also then need to attach all your intercompany agreements and somehow merge them all together into one file. So the reality is you will not be able to upload it to the business portal, and the ATO has confirmed that, but we just need to get their website updated to confirm that.
Yep.
So you will need to use a piece of software.
Yep. Okay. All right. So the current process. So this would be familiar to, I think, all of you, and I'd imagine is a real painful process. And we're going to talk about some of those challenges that you're experiencing now. We really want to get your feedback on them as well, see if we're hitting the mark. Current process, you're getting your source data out of your systems, your intercompany transactions in whatever form. Usually it's very unstructured, very messy. You're then having to create an Excel template. Okay, so quite often what we've seen corporates do in terms of preparing the IDS, they will design an Excel template for the disclosures. So then they'll use SUMIF, VLOOKUPs and pivot tables to group the transactions, summarize, filter, especially to produce the top 3 countries for questions 3 and 4, which is very manual, very labor intensive, and fraught with a lot of risk. That'll then get likely sent if you're going to be getting your advisor to engage on terms of review and file, but you'll send it to the advisor. We know we've got a few advisors in the room, and certainly you'll get this information from your clients, you'll review it, and you'll probably end up re-preparing it anyway, because it just is very hard and to necessarily interpret the way it's been prepared by the corporate, and that's no fault on any of you, it's just sometimes just very difficult based on your source information. It will then be keyed into the forms manually and then filed off to into the tax office, either on the paper forms or electronically. All right. So now we've got a question, and it's a loaded question. How much effort is currently spent each year preparing Section A of your IDS? Less than 1 week, 1 to 3 weeks, 3 to 5, more than 5, or you're not sure. So this will be interesting to see your response, because we've had some fairly consistent responses, I think.
We have, yep. So, yeah, so 10 seconds starting now.
Okay. Wow.
Okay.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. So I think if I aggregate all this data that's in my head we've spoken about 500 to 600 corporations now across Australia to ask that exact same question. And as Russell said before, we'll aggregate all this and share it because it's really insightful. But I would say on average it's about 5 weeks. That's a really broad statement. You know, we've had one corporation
26 weeks.
26 weeks.
26 weeks. Yep. Across 3 states and about 15 people.
Yep.
We've had 5 months.
ASX top 10, by the way. So.
Yep, that's a top end. But even a smaller one is taking 3 weeks, and they've got only a handful of jurisdictions that they transact with.
Yeah, I think there's a pattern. I think you find that large conglomerate groups with lots of different source systems and source accounting treatments, that exponentially amplifies the preparation time because of the various different coding structures that they've got. But if you've got a corporation with one common general ledger with common transaction booking, generally the numbers come down.
Yeah, we had one yesterday that only has transacted in New Zealand, and they were less than a week. But it's an anomaly. It's very unusual. I mean, the common statement we hear is it takes more time to do the IDS than the whole tax return, And that kind of is consistent with the fact that the whole IDS instructions are longer than the whole form C instructions. So go figure.
Yep. So can I just ask you a question there? So there's quite a few who've said more than 5 weeks. Can I just get one person
Who's brave enough to say it?
who wants to say why? I want to talk about it. It's too painful.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
It'll be at least over 2 months.
Right.
And we're in 60 countries around the world.
Wow. Okay. And
we have also 10, 12 different transactions.
Yep. And how are you collecting that information currently? Are you going direct to the source system and extracting it, or are you sending out tax packs or information requests to local financial controllers?
We get a dump from our accounts payable.
That's good.
Yeah. Which is normally gobbledygook.
Okay. So so I think the next slide might resonate with some of the patterns that we've found. Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, thank you. So, all right. So I just wanted to talk through some of the trends. And again, apologies for the size of the slide. There's a bit of content there, but just want to talk about some of the patterns as to why it takes 2 months or 24 weeks or why it takes so long. And I think it all comes down to these reasons. So, and I think everyone's got a slightly different view as to, or everyone's got a different sort of facts and circumstances. But so starting from the second point there, grouping and mapping transactions. So you need to be able to get these intercompany transactions from your source system, and somehow you need to group them together to feed into the ATO's disclosures. Now, usually what happens, of course, is that the booking instructions by the APAR teams, they don't incorporate, or the systems don't capture the right attributes to allow you to easily map it to a form. So therefore, you need to trawl through transactions and identify somehow to group them into those particular disclosures, either by guesswork, but usually you'll probably find a code segment or part of the chart of account code block, maybe, based on transaction type or some other indicator where you can make an inference and then group them and feed them into a disclosure. Excel preparation. Is there anyone in here who's not using Excel in part of their preparation of an IDS disclosure currently? No hands. So not surprising. So everyone uses Excel, right? And it's good. It does the job. It's flexible and it's easy to use and whatnot. It's good for that perspective. But the problem is once you've done it 1 year, and then when you go to do it next year, you have to repeat exactly the same steps again. And you need to remember, okay, what did I actually do last year? Well, that was 12 months ago. What's happened since then? You never remember. So you're having to go through and recreate, again, exactly the same process. Things have probably changed in the meantime in terms of disclosures from the ATO or maybe some of the transactions that you're undertaking. But that then leads to a whole bunch of source data assumptions. So that point before about how do I ensure that, how do I identify all the transaction types based upon the ATO's disclosure categories? How do I actually identify the country that the interrelated party is actually domiciled in? Is that even in there in the source transactions? Probably not. So somehow you need to then get the intercompany code and add to it the country that it's related to. Key person dependencies. This is a really key point, I think, particularly for a lot of inbound corporations where it's one person doing this job. You don't have the luxury of having a large tax team. So that one poor person's got it all sitting up here. And when they leave, have they written it down?
Yep, the rules are with them.
The assumptions that they've made or the decisions that they've made. And the last point there is just about service firms. So as Daniel alluded to before, when this information is then passed to a service firm, and I think somewhere north of 50% of corporations in Australia will engage service firm for a review of an IDS, thereabouts. The challenge for them for a service firm is to try and unpick all of that. And it's all been done by spreadsheets and not guesswork, but spreadsheets and not a lot of audit trail. It's really hard. So then that leads to them having overruns, which puts cost pressure on them, which they then need to try and recover more cost from the corporation. And it just leads to tension, right? So, this is basically where we've been spending a lot of our energy with our technology team, trying to create some solutions to remove those challenges.
And they need to be in there for a long time. I think, whenever clients look at our software from an income tax perspective, they usually see the IDS forms in Integrator and ask, do you have something to prepare it, let alone actually disclose the information? Yeah, all right. Now we've got a question again what do you see as the biggest challenge with preparing your existing IDS and likely future local file preparation? Is it the effort it takes to comply, risk of error, key person dependency, or source data challenges?
Someone joked and said we should have a number 5, all of the above, but...
Yep.
Sorry.
Which we thought about doing, but we
Pick
thought
one.
that's a cop-out.
Come on. Okay, so 10 seconds.
There has been a key theme to this one too, actually. Very dominant answer.
Okay. Yeah, same result.
Same as the others.
Definitely.
Yep. Which is a good segue to, I think, where we're going next, which is how do we address that now with a solution?
Yeah. Okay,
Right.
so Daniel spoke before about the current process, and we've said before the current process is all about getting data, putting it into Excel, doing lots of copying and pasting, and having to filter and sort, and hopefully not adjust too much, but sometimes that's required. And then basically, eventually group it and probably rekey it or rewrite it into some forms. So what we've done, and actually with the local file being introduced, there was a lot of attention. I've seen a lot of people coming to us saying, help us with this IDS thing. You know, we use Integrator. We use Integrator already for corporate income tax returns. That's fine. But to Daniel's point, what about the IDS? That's the one that's really a problem area for us. So what we've done is we've looked at that whole process from start to finish and said, okay, how can we streamline it? How can we de-risk it as much as possible? So essentially what we've done is we have a couple of components that make up the technology. One bit looks after let's call it the back end or the e-filing. That's the boring bit, right, about how do I just get it through the wire to the ATO and make sure that they're happy with what I've sent through, and that's including all the financial information plus the agreements. But the other element is more about how do I get that data and how do I collect it in an efficient manner and reduce the risk on the individuals and make it a repeatable process so that next year I can use a robot or basically press a button to do that a little bit more efficiently for me.
And remove Excel.
And remove, yeah, exactly right. Remove the reliance on that Excel spreadsheet. So yeah, so 2 components. You can see the process here. Basically, what we do under our solution is we take the transactions, we run them through what's called a data transformer, and that's all about basically trying to group, summarize, identify, and bring these transactions together, which then feeds into Integrator to then facilitate the completion of the local file, and then that gets submitted. So
probably just the one point there is that's really taking an automated tool and replacing Excel. Okay, so what you've been doing in those Excel spreadsheets with VLOOKUPs and pivot tables, you dispose of and use this instead.
Yep. Spot on.
Yep.
Yeah, so a couple of things about this data transformer. So it's all about trying to remove the spreadsheets. Basically, it can take intercompany transactions from any source. So whether you're using one source general ledger system, whether you're using multiple systems, it doesn't matter. It'll take it in whatever format it comes in. And then it basically supports that systematic filtering, cleansing, so basically getting rid of the junk, grouping and summarizing. So again, all that stuff that you would do manually in an Excel spreadsheet, you're basically teaching this robot how to do it. Now it's not going to remove the need to still do it next year, but basically you're putting those rules into a system so that the next time you upload a set of intercompany transactions, you hit play and it will repeat. So it's just repeating a process that you're teaching it. So of course the beauty of doing that is then those assumptions that are going through your head when you're looking at that data, then they've been recorded, which is creating a good audit trail, which makes it easier for a reviewer to then understand what it is that you've done, and then, as I said, to repeat the process in future.
And importantly, what we're also saying with this tool is we're not asking you to manipulate your source data as well. So for those of you, back to that polling question, who've got all these data source challenges, we want you to take the extract out of your systems, if you've only got multiple ones or one, and just upload it into this tool. Okay, so that's the first element. This is just a screenshot of the current version as it stands. So it's still being in the process of being finalised at the moment. Okay, we're actually waiting upon some finalisation from the ATO about the specific output that we're trying to produce on a local file. Of course, they've just finalised that table for us now, which is great. Yes, and actually, sorry, just on that, Jim, that XML schema, so just this is important to note, about 3 weeks ago now, they made an announcement on their website that there's a final draft XML schema. That is the final. There is no more versions. Final draft is a little bit misleading, but it is final.
Yeah. So so we're actually running a a beta program for this. So there's a number of corporations. We've actually got 4 corporations, 3 in Melbourne, 1 Perth, who are interested in actually taking part of this. We're going to be starting this in 2 weeks' time in Melbourne, running it over a period of a week, sort of a focused, intensive process. We're actually going to take their December year-end balances, run it through the tool, and prove it. And then we're going to spend the next couple of weeks to refine it, get the technology better, and then we're going to release it out to everyone at the end of April. So we've already run a lot of clients' data through it. It's working really well, but we just want to road test it with the people first. And there's a mixture, inbound, outbound, large, small. We'll make sure it works for all different fact patterns. Yeah, absolutely. So that's that. The next component is really all about the e-filing. So this, basically the way this component works, I think I explained this just very briefly before. So this is all about now getting the output summarized transactions, loading them into the cloud, attaching all of the relevant intercompany agreements as well. So, and there's a point there, I think, later on a survey question about intercompany agreements, and a lot of you probably don't even know where they are, if they exist. We had one of the corporations yesterday, a group head of tax of a multinational has decided that tax now needs to be the owner of intercompany agreements, because if that information is now being disclosed to a regulator, who else is going to take that responsibility of ensuring that the most up-to-date version is actually housed in a central document repository? Of course, these things typically sit with business units or local financial controllers, but tax now needs to actually take control of that.
I think they had about thousands of intercompany legal agreements, didn't they, as well, which is a real challenge in itself. The other point to this as well is this is the mandatory bit, right? So this is what you actually need to submit in that XML schema form. So this is where this part of the solution addresses that need for a software solution to get this information to the ATO in that XML format.
Yeah, yep. So I guess, again, there's probably a fair few of you in the room here I know today who are already using Integrator. So you're already using Integrator for corporate income tax compliance. This is just another module that sits on Integrator. Okay, so for those of you already using it, it's very simple. It's a simple upgrade and it's there.
And what will the ATO do with all this information? Which is an interesting question. I think a lot of comments we've been getting from taxpayers is they're asking for a lot, but are they actually going to do much with it?
Yeah. So there's probably one important point in there that that comes out, and this will come out when you actually go and complete your local file Part B. So when you're now sharing a document now with the ATO, they'll ask you to identify the document. So they'll want you to create an identifier for it so that you can talk a common language. So rather than it being some vague document name, they'll ask you to give it a label. So again, it's for those of you who haven't already started, I'd encourage you to sort of think about the collection of intercompany agreements you have and what sort of structured labeling system you can come up with to give it some sort of unique identifier that makes sense to people in your organisation, but equally you can use in communication with the ATO.
So next polling question. The ATO requires these intercompany agreements to be lodged and updated annually for any amendments. Has your organisation worked out how it's going to comply with this particular requirement? So just this is a more simple yes or no or unsure response.
Okay, 10 seconds. That says.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not surprising, I don't think.
Well, it's good to see 1 in 5 are all comfortable, so that's good. Very good.
I think we had one city that was fairly strong on the yes front, but yeah, it's generally been no. Yep, or unsure.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, Easter. Great.
Some practical considerations for you to think about. So understanding your filing requirements, what, when, and how. Hopefully this session has been really informative for you, and you can take away a bit from this. How are you going to collect and aggregate this data across the organisation, and how do you think you might file this to the ATO? Are you going to go through your service provider or service firm? Would you use Integrator? Are you considering something being built in-house? And we actually had a few questions about that yesterday, didn't we?
Yeah. So a number of larger corporations have had their IT group working with them to try and build something, as I was talking about just a bit earlier on. But I think a couple of those have come to the conclusion that that's not going to be possible. But I know one corporation who's still persisting to try and do something themselves. So, yeah, but most have given up.
Yeah, very difficult. And yeah, this is important. So we're running some product demonstrations throughout April through some webinars that we're going to be holding, because there is a lot of interest in this space. So we want to handle the number of people that are likely wanting to see this. So as Jim said, we've got a beta program going. So please do reach out to us if you want to be part of that. But equally, we'll be running these sessions during April, because there is a real need to have something in place for early balancers who want to lodge in July, which we've committed to doing.
Yeah, and one thing we're going to do for these next demonstrations as well is we're going to run some live data through the product set, because I think a lot of people, we've had feedback from these sessions saying, what's it going to look like, this final disclosure, how many rows and how detailed. So we're actually going to run some live data for a fictitious client, but we'll run some live data through it so you'll get a better sense of how it's all going to work.
Yep. All right, so that's a good segue to questions and seeing who's got questions from the audience. We've had lots so far in Melbourne, so you've got to beat Melbourne.
Hi.
Hello.
I have a few questions.
Uh-oh.
You get one.
So the first one is in relation to how the IDS and this new CbC reporting module interlink with each other. So from your demonstration or your presentation, I understand that this new module will take care of Part A, Part B, etc. But as you know, in the IDS, we still need to complete sections B, C, D, etc. So is that still going to be part of the income tax module, and we still need to manually complete that?
Yeah, correct. So at the moment, not the moment, the ATO, as Daniel was just touching on at the start, they've told us the local file has to be submitted independently of their tax return. Now they've said that it needs to be submitted at the same time, but they're actually separate submissions, so probably in the same day or in the same week or something like that. But yeah, so the Part A local file, or the local file, of course, is a substitute just for Part A. The remainder of the IDS is completed as normal under the current process.
And they will have the ability to select if you're going to be choosing to lodge Part A of the local file, i.e. leaving Section A blank, and then completing the rest of the IDS. So it's something we've been talking to them and how it's going to work. Interestingly, we've had an early balancer already in Perth who lodges very early. They decided they wanted to lodge in May for their tax return. And unfortunately, if you are a December balancer, you don't get the benefits of the stationery being released until after budget time. So they have to wait until July to be able to lodge their local file, Part A, and get the admin solution. So if they want to lodge their tax return in May, they will not get the admin solution.
You have to do the full IDS.
Okay, thanks. So my second question, I have three. So my second question is, you showed a screenshot of the I guess the beta as it is at the moment.
Yep.
And from what I can see, it seems to be working on a template, so that they have preset columns.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, that was a fictitious example. Those columns, that's basically your input data. So
oh, okay. So it's not a preset template that you have to filter your existing data
exactly
into.
Right. No, you're bringing your data in a natural form, and then you're going through and filtering and working, as you would today in Excel.
Okay.
Basically, same principles.
We try to make the user interface very much like Excel so that you have a very similar experience in using and preparing it the way you would in Excel, just with a lot more flexibility and a lot more automation around what you're setting up with the rules for future years.
Okay, great. And my final question is for the tax technical nerd, Daniel.
Oh boy.
So it's
There's
not...
advisors in the room, so I might just default to them if I don't know the answer. I haven't done
It's not really regarding CbC, but it's the interaction between the Part B of the CbC local file, which requires you to lodge your financial statements.
Yes.
And then in the legislation in 2015 that requires companies to lodge with the ATO a general purpose financial report. Now, the general purpose financial report doesn't start until 1 January 2017, but Part B, obviously, you need to lodge by 31 December 2017. So is the ATO just going to accept our special purpose financial reports for this year end?
There is some guidance that was out on this just as the ATO is releasing the local file design. Top of my head, I can't recall. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Very helpful having him.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, the response was basically the best available financial statements you have at the time of lodgement, whether they be special purpose or general.
It's very helpful having a former colleague in the room.
You can do the next one. Okay.
So I have a question. That's all right. If we use a service provider to help us with a local file and they use CCH as a solution, who would be inputting the information in the cloud, or who will CCH be providing us with support, or is it the support through the service provider and then the service provider provides us with support?
Correct. You speak through the service provider, and we're working with them to provide that solution to corporate.
So training on how to fill out the information, would that be
through the service provider?
Through the service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you end up using the transformer on the desktop, then there'll be probably the service provider and us working together to help you.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions? Gilbert? No, we'll just get the... Oh, great. Andy.
So Gilbert here, he's a tax and an IT nerd. So just to call you out there, Gilbert. There's not too many of you in the world to have this.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. Thanks a lot for that presentation, guys. First, that was very helpful. I just have a question about submitting the files through the portal, or submitting the schema through the portal. Is there simultaneous validation that's undertaken? So if it doesn't meet certain criteria, it's not taken as being lodged?
Yeah, good question. Yep. Yeah. And so the validations will take place pre-lodgement as well, so there'll be a pre-lodged set of validations before it is submitted.
It's actually a really good point, though, because...
Oh, sorry, not so. I was more thinking of the ATO, not so much with you guys. No doubt you'll have a lot of validation, but does the ATO validate if you were to lodge yourself as well, or do you know about that? Or do they just accept anything as being lodged and then they'll come back and question it?
That's a really good question. I don't know. So, yeah, and that, I'm sure I don't know. We should find it out.
Yeah, we can talk about that. We've got to actually.
It's a $525,000 question. That's why.
Yeah, it is. It is. Which, it is.
We've, I think Daniel was just going to mention, we've got all these questions that are coming in from corporations. We're going to the ATO. We've consolidated all our responses. They're about to go up on our website, so they should be up on our website next couple of days. So we'll send out that link to everyone who's attended these sessions.
Yeah, the ATO's got an FAQ.
Keep watching it too, because we're going to keep updating it.
Yeah, the ATO's got an FAQ as well, but probably more from a technical perspective. So we're going to kind of amalgamate both of them. The other thing too is maybe you just want to mention about our escalation around the local file.
There's some challenges here. Like with a lot of introduction to new technology, there are some challenges around getting all the parts to work together. So the ATO have got to get their bit working. We have to get our bit working. Corporations have to get their data ready, and all planets need to align to make it submit submit successfully. Excuse me. The ATO at the moment cannot release and finalise the ability to submit information to the ATO until we've been currently told the middle of June, which leaves corporations with, us as a software vendor, but equally corporations with just such a finite period of time for December balances. So we are working really closely with the ATO to try and bring that forward so we can take away some of the pressure. So that's an open discussion.
Just a bit of an admin thing back to the validation, because it actually, one of the hardest things about doing an e-filing an income tax return, not an issue with FBT for some reason, but the income tax return and all the multiplicity of all these little boxes where you could put 0 or you could put nothing or you could tick an A or you could not. The validation errors that you get sometimes are illogical with an income tax return. I would imagine this is going to be a very similar experience. There's no little help list that the tax office put out to say, for this box, to get this to go through the magic gate, you need to have used X or Y, don't use a 0, do use a 0, leave it blank rather than use a 0. All that sort of thing is really helpful, and whoever designs the thing that drives the validation then accepts what will be processed and won't. Like it used to be, if you physically lodged your tax return and you didn't put a 0 or you left it blank or whatever, everybody knew you meant 0. You know, and that's the simplest thing. You wouldn't believe some of the validation errors you get when you're trying to do an income tax return. And some days something will throw up a validation, and for some reason it seems to sometimes only give you the top 20 validation errors. So once you've solved those top 20, then resubmitting another 20. Anyway, I think that's a really important thing to make sure it's factored into.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Yeah, sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
We've actually had that. We've experienced that pain on your behalf as well, because with our income tax module integrator, we support all the SBR validation errors, and we have had a challenging.
I think there's about 10,000 validation rules just for the company tax return. The local file validation rules haven't been released yet. We're waiting, but yeah, it's a good point.
Hey Jim, thanks for the presentation, guys. It was really good. 3 questions as well. I'll just go through them and answer them in kind of whatever order you'd like to. So you mentioned analysis and the ATO using our data to analyze and perform trend analysis, etc., etc. So is there an idea to introduce that into the transformer tool now or later, so we can kind of predate that and have a look at it? Second question, there was discussion in the ATO on branch dealings, so question 18 of section A, whether or not it would be included in XML. I understand that it isn't, but maybe you can give some thoughts on that. And then also timing of your filing. Jim, I think you mentioned it. Like, does it need to be contemporaneous with your tax return? If you file a day, a week, a month early your tax return, can you wait until your deadline for the XML? Does it have to go together?
Yeah, good question. So I'll start with the last one first because I can remember it.
I'll repeat it.
Okay, I hope you got the other one.
Daniel's a clever guy.
The best guidance we've got on the submission timing is at the same time. So is at the same hour, day, week, month, year, don't know.
Sorry, ATO response to that one.
So we are waiting for a response and guidance, which I suspect will come in the week after next with their instructions. But but I think they'll be fair and reasonable, you'd think, around that. So I'm going to go back to the first point now. So that was about
the analysis.
Which I think is really, really important, right? So the beauty about this, some people who are a little bit more glass half full see this as an opportunity, right? So this is probably the first time a corporation tax group has actually go and get all this great data, right? It's going to be a pain to get it, but once you've got it, then it presents an opportunity, right? So you've got the information, you're going to have to keep it up to date and get it each year. So then you can actually start to see, okay, so what
We had that question raised yesterday actually by another large bank as well. So
conveniently skip number 2.
And branches, yeah. Question 18.
I just remember seeing that you have got a voluntary disclosure as part of the admin solution for branches when you're lodging Part A, but in terms of it being included in the XML schema more broadly, I'm not sure. I'm going to look at Sarah. Not sure? Yeah, I'm not sure. There is some guidance around branches with the admin solution on their website, so have a look. But again, I guess that'll probably come through in the instructions.
Okay, thanks guys.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Sure. Oh boy. Yes.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Heather, do you know if there's any questions coming in from the webcast? Oh, there are. Oh wow. Got that. Thanks.
Right. Mine will be quick, I think. How clever is your software at figuring out which transactions need to be included in Part B? Like, can it kind of detect which ones might not need to have their agreements provided, that sort of thing?
Good question.
Okay, my
short answer is not yet.
Okay. No.
But we're doing a beta program in a couple of weeks,
yeah.
so yeah.
Well, the better response is that depends on how clever Jim is.
Not very. No, so we need to work. Yeah. If you can, basically, if you can spot a pattern to identify a material transaction, then yes, it can. We just need to make it do it. So.
Okay. And my second question will be even easier.
Yep.
If there's a global tax director or someone kind of who wants to review what information is being provided to the ATO but doesn't like reading XML documents, does your software produce a nice readable output that can be shared? Yep.
Absolutely. It's got a very powerful reporting engine, so you can actually design your own reports in there if you want to, or just produce one straight out of the system.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I think there are a couple of
questions. This is a question that's coming on from an email on the webinar, and they want to know, does this apply to related parties, companies that are not part of the group but are related? A bit vague.
Okay.
My reading of the ATO instructions is anything that would have needed to be disclosed in your IDS previously will need to be included in your local file.
Yeah, right. Actually, I was speaking to a taxpayer before the session. They asked a somewhat similar question, so I wouldn't think that would change.
Okay. No further questions? All right. Well, oh, sorry, Heather, was it? Across to Russell, was it?
Yeah, for some closing remarks.
Okay, thanks guys. So thank you everyone. I hope that started to demystify some of the elements around XML schema or e-filing. Now a couple of plugs. On Heather, April 11, there is a follow-on webinar that we're doing in conjunction with the ATO. So it won't be here, it'll be a webinar, Heather, that's what we're doing? Okay, so it'll be a webinar. We'll confirm the details, send out the details to everyone, but there'll be a joint Wolters Kluwer ATO hands-on practical guide around e-filing and other aspects of country by local file. Okay, all right, so that's point number one. Point number two, if you open up your folders on your seats, you'll see a questionnaire in there that we would very much appreciate if you could spend a couple of minutes reviewing and completing. It helps us fine-tune these types of presentations so we make sure we can hit the mark in future events, and also if you are stuck and need some assistance, we can follow up, have some of our smart people follow up.
We were thinking of actually turning that into an XML document and seeing how much you learned about XML through the session, but then thought that might be a little bit ambitious for you to complete. So. Yeah.
So we've got Heather's doing sign language.
Oh yes, yep. So the deck that we went through today, that will be emailed out afterwards. So you didn't have to take photos of everything, but we'll send it out. So if you do want to refer to it offline, and as Russell said, if there's any follow-up questions, then just please come on through and ask.
Yeah. And Jim, we are aggregating the poll questions from across the 4 states, and we're also posting the questions that we put to the responses to the questions we put to the ATO.
Yep. And all this information is going to be posted on CCHintegrator.com, so you'll be able to reference it from there as well.
Yep, including the responses to some of the questions that were asked today.
Correct.
Kindly answered by a couple of other people as well.
Yeah. Okay, so thanks everyone for attending today. We hope it was of benefit. and we look forward to talking to you again shortly. Thanks, everyone. Bye.